Welcome back, everyone. This is Kat, and we are still progressing through our Getting to Know You Block of the Month quilt. So this month we are on block 10, Getting to Know Appliqué. So if you are participating in the block of the month through my shop, you would have received a packet with all of your applique pieces already pre-fused and pre-laser cut. So this is going to make this month's block really easy. If you're not participating and you're doing this quilt on your own, then you are going to have to trace and cut all of your pieces out. So once you get that done, you can join in with where we're going to start off here. So the first thing you're going to do is open your packet, and I have already opened all 4 of my packets and I've clipped them apart. So they come all together. This was how the leaves were. I should have left one together to show you, but I was excited and I got them all cut apart. So don't try and just pull these off. You're going to want to take some small sharp scissors and just snip. There's just every once in a while there's going to be a thread holding them together. So you want to clip those all apart. If you try and pull them like I did, the first one, you're going to pull a thread out of your applique piece. So don't do that, just clip them apart. Once you have them all clipped apart and separated, then go ahead and just remove the paper backing. It'll come right off. Now, word of caution, a couple of mine, when I peeled the paper backing off, it also peeled the adhesive off. So just be mindful when you're peeling that paper off. There could be a piece that didn't get enough heat during this process, and you'll want to just go to the iron and repress that so that the fusible stays on the back of our fabric instead of peels off with paper. Now, according to our book, we are supposed to create our template, placement template for all these applique shapes we got in our little packet here. So I am using a product that I sell, and it's called Pattern Ease, and I love it because it is a non-woven. I don't know if you can see, but you can see through it. It's very, very transparent, and it makes a wonderful material to create our placement guide on. It's very inexpensive too. So follow the directions in the book. You're going to draw that diagonal line on your square first to make sure everything is oriented on that diagonal line nicely. Once you have it traced, then what I did, and you can see that I've got the letters corresponding to the shapes. Really, there aren't that many shapes in this block. You don't really need those, but if you want to put them on, go ahead. Once you have it traced, which I traced it, it was traced in pencil first, and then I traced over it in a black Sharpie pen. The reason you want to do that is the fabric that we're going to put our applique on this month, which is our stick fabric, it can be, now I'm using the medium gray. The dark gray is even darker than this. And to be able to see this placement guide through this gray fabric, you're going to really need some high contrast here. So go ahead and use your Sharpie pen. Just be aware when you do this, do not trace this on a surface that you won't be able to get Sharpie out of. So because the Sharpie will go right through this material because it's so thin, and it will go ahead and mark anything that's below it. I did get one little bit of black on my cabinet top here, but it did come off. It came off okay, but you just don't want to mess. So put a piece of paper down, put a piece of cardboard down when you're going over this with the Sharpie pen. Okay, once this is traced, I want you to notice if you follow the template in the book exactly, which we did here, on two of my edges, I feel that this leaf shape right here is too close to the edge. Because when I sew this block into my quilt, I am actually going to sew right to the edge of that leaf, and I do not want to do that. And this one over here is a little close, not as close, but this one ended up super close. So two ways you can fix that is you're going to line up your fabric, right side facing up of your fabric over the top of our placement guide. And once you get everything laid on there, we want to go right side up. So what I do is I flipped it over, and I'm looking at this lower right-hand corner here. Instead of lining up, so you can line up your edges exactly on your, because you're cutting your fabric square, the exact measurement as your placement guide. But like I said, I feel this is too close right here, so I'm just going to scoot my placement guide over just about 1/8 of an inch away from this edge, and there. Now I'm happy that I'm not going to sew right into this leaf when I get my block done. So just give yourself a little wiggle room. Now notice down in this corner that my lines don't extend in the corner. That's okay. We've got some wiggle room up here. So I'm going to just slide my stalk so that it hangs off of the edge of my fabric, like this one that I did here. So I'll show you. I just made sure that this stem was extended beyond the corner because I want to make sure that I get, when I stitch this block in, I want to make sure that I'm stitching through my stem. I think that's going to help it in the longevity of my quilt. Okay. So now that we have these lined up, I'm going to flip it back upside right so that I can start placing my appliques on here. But one thing I want to show you is I am using my Sew Steady table that came with my Elna sewing machine. I'm going to use it as a light box. Even though I have the center here cut out, it's okay. I'll show you how you can utilize this as a light box. It's pretty cool. So I carry this product at the shop. It's called a light stick. And you can use this to turn any acrylic table into a light box. So here's what it looks like. It's probably about 12 inches long. And I've got it plugged into my sewing machine through a USB port. But if you just put a regular plug end on it, you can plug it into the wall. And once you touch this, it illuminates. It's just a light bar. It's really cool. So I'm going to put it underneath my acrylic table. And if I want to work on this half, I'll just keep my light bar here. And as I move over, when I slide my light bar under, I can see my placement guide. Now you can't see it through here because you're seeing all the sticks on top of the fabric. You might be able to see a few of them. But once, so what I did was I pulled my square so that I'm at the edge of my opening, and I placed all of my appliques on here. And I'm going to show you the bud applique here. I'm going to show you what order this goes in because I kind of, it took me 2 goes at it. So we're going to put the dark raspberry oval at the top. And then I'm going to put my, actually we're going to put our stem in here. Let me get the right one. We're going to have, this is the shape that's going to go on last. And let me find the heart. So we can put our heart shape on next. See if that's in the, okay, that is in the, I'm going to move it up here so you can see it a little bit better. And then I need my, well, I'll leave the stem off for a minute. So we'll put the raspberry circle on, either our heart or the base of our bud. This is the last piece you're going to put on there, and it's going to cover up the top part of our base, and it's going to cover the bottom point of our heart. And it's going to look like this when it's done. And it is just so sweet. Try and hold this up for you so you can see it. Sweet, sweet. And of course our stem would go underneath here. So once I get all of the elements on this half of my table on, I'm just going to slide it up. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the elements on the second half of my square on here. Okay, once you have everything placed on your square, it's going to look like this. The magic of video. Isn't this gorgeous? And then you're going to carefully, I have a wool pressing mat, which I absolutely love, and I slid this off onto my wool pressing mat, carried it over to my iron, and you're going to just gently fuse this. You want high heat on your iron, no steam, and you're just going to press it down for about 5 seconds. And once you have it all pressed and fused, then we're ready to do our applique. So I'm going to go ahead and get my machine set up, and I'll meet you right back here, and let's do some applique. So let's talk about setting our machine up. On the machine that I'm using, the Elna Excellent 780, I have several different kinds of applique stitches already built into my machine. And I did some testing to see what I liked best for this block, for the scale of the applique, and then the pieces on this block. And so what I have chosen is an applique stitch where my needle originates from the right side of my foot. That's thus the R. The M's refer to the needle originating in the middle of my foot. I like my needle originating from the right because it's easier for me to line up when I'm starting a new applique shape. And then I've also selected this particular stitch, applique stitch, because I have 2 straight stitches in between each leg. The leg is what actually shows up on the top of our applique and kind of holds everything in place. The 2 stitches here in between are run parallel with the edge of our applique. And so what that does is it kind of defines the edge of my applique piece, but it doesn't crowd the bars that actually hold the piece down. So for the larger applique pieces, which are at the top of the large flower, I am using this particular applique stitch, and I'm leaving my stitch width and my stitch length without changing it. So my stitch width is 3.0. My stitch length is 2.0. For the smaller applique pieces, we need to alter the stitch width and the stitch length. So I like my applique stitches proportional to the size of my applique piece, and that's why I adjust those two. And also because they are smaller pieces, and if they're curved at all, which they normally are, applique pieces usually always have curves, you are going to want to shorten the stitch length because it makes it easier and you get a smoother curve when you shorten the stitch length. So on my smaller applique pieces, and those are the ones in the bud, so let me just show you what I'm talking about. If I can get this up here. So this larger, the big flower here, I'll show you up close. This is that stitch that I was referring to that I didn't alter the length of the width. So the width is 3.0 and the length is 2.0. But then if we come over to the bud, and I'll show you the top of the bud here, try to get it up close. I've used that same applique stitch. There are 2 straight stitches in between each leg. And so that's the same, but I've altered the stitch width to 2.6. So I reduced it from 3 to 2.6. And the stitch length I've reduced from 2.0 to 1.8. And that's going to allow me to get this nice smooth curve without being pokey and pointy, because now I can go around that curve and I can pivot and get a really nice curve. So you feel free to choose whatever applique stitch you prefer on your machine. If you have multiple ones, you may like something different, but for this demonstration, I just wanted to let you know what I was using. If you like the looks of it, you may want to duplicate your applique stitch with your machine. Now let's talk about applique foot. So most machines come with a decorative foot. I'm trying to get in here so I can get up close here for you. These basically are decorative feet, so they can be used for satin stitching. They can be used for any type of decorative stitch, which also includes our applique stitch. So the reason you want to use your decorative foot is if you flip them over, you're going to see that they're built kind of like a sled. They have runners on the bottom. The silver outsides are like runners. And then there's a channel or a groove in between them. So if you look at them from the profile, you're going to see that they've got a little indentation there. So when you're stitching anything decorative there, I think you can see it pretty good there. So when you're stitching anything decorative, the skis are going to slide right over the top of it. The stitch is going to form, but the skis are going to slide over top of it and not distort your stitching. So these are definitely the kind of feet you want to use when you're doing applique. And then depending on whether you prefer the closed toe, this is kind of called a closed toe because we've got some plastic in here. I actually prefer the open toe because it allows me to really see so that I can line up. Now, Alna also makes this awesome little applique foot. It's very similar to this foot, except for it's a little more compact. It's a little narrower, and it's got a bigger ridge on the bottom here, a bigger indentation, which I like because the indentation is really going to ride right along the edge of your applique. But of course, I think I left it at the shop, so we're going to use my open toe decorative foot for this demonstration, and then once I get that foot home, maybe I'll show you next month what that looks like. So let's move over to the machine where I can show you one of our appliques. So we're gonna get this set up. Let's just quickly talk about thread. Now, you are free to use any thread you want to for your applique, but of course, Nancy designed this great little getting to know you thread collection, 10 colors. It's 100% cotton, but these are 28 weight, and 28 weight is a lot heavier than 50 weight sewing thread. So the beauty of these, number one, they've got this beautiful satin sheen to them, so they're going to be very reflective and give it a finished look. But also your thread, because it's so heavy, it's going to actually make your appliques look more dimensional. They're going to look more 3D. And they are actually going to protect the edge of your applique from raveling, because the thread will, in a sense, like build a wall up on the edge of that applique. Initially, I thought I was going to have to use a little bit larger needle for this thread, but I've discovered that an 80 microtex needle works beautifully. So there's no need to have to use a larger needle unless your particular setup is not working. Then you may need to go to a larger needle, but just for the eye. But the 80 microtex are working great for me. So I do have this, the dark purple. Well, actually, this is more of a blue violet. This is more of a purple. I've already done the purple, but I want to show you. I don't know if you can see, but you can see how dimensional this petal and this petal is compared to this petal. It really does finish it off and make it kind of raise up off of your fabric, which I think is a plus. So that's why I'm using this thread. And I do have these thread packs at the shop. And if you are participating in the block of the month, then I have a special price for you. So I am going to go ahead and start with this applique. I'm going to try and get a little closer with the camera. Let me get my needle set. So, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's right on. Okay, not sure I'm going to be able to get much closer. I might have to angle this over, so hang on, bear with me just a minute, because I got to be able to sew as well. Let me tip this down. There, I think that's a little better. See if I can do this and without blocking your view. So I'm just going to stitch up, and again, I haven't altered my stitch width and length, so I'm at a 3.0 width and a 2.0 length, and I'm going to come down here to the corner, and I have this really wonderful feature on my machine that when I take my foot off of the pedal, my foot pedal, then my presser foot lifts up. And I like that because now I don't have to keep raising and lowering that to pivot. Now, I only have to pivot twice on this piece, but I'm going to do one over here where we're going to have to do almost a pivot at each stitch. And that really comes in handy. So my needle is following, my needle is originating from the right, and it's just running parallel to my applique piece. Not sure I'm going to like that. Kind of got off on that edge. I want to get down here so I can. Now, you want to stitch as close to the center circle as possible so that when we're finished here, when we stitch over this last oval, we're going to stitch over top of all of those previously sewn threads, and I think that'll be fine. Got one little stitch that just so happened it came right at the end, and you can actually lift your foot and go back, reposition your foot, and just stitch over the last applique. There, I'm just pivoting. Every once in a while there's a little bit of a curve to this. My foot pedal's making all kinds of noises down there. See where I'm at? Okay. There, I'm going to stop there, and I'll take one stitch coming over here, and then I'll get my other leg. There we go. Now I'm going to have to pivot. And another little pivot there. See if I can get this corner. Oh, perfect. So I was right on that corner. Now when I come down here, I'm going to take 2 stitches and then come in. Now, if you notice your fabric puckering up as you do this, you're going to need to loosen your upper thread tension. You don't want your block to be puckered up. It'll be really hard to get it to lay flat after the fact. When you do, if you do alter your upper thread tension, what you want to make sure is when you're looking at the back, you want to make sure that you're still seeing your top thread being pulled through to the back. See how we can see all these colors? Now I have a white thread in my bobbin, which I forgot to tell you about. So I have a regular 50 weight sewing thread in the bobbin. So this is lighter weight than the 28 weight I'm using in the needle. But when you're using a computerized sewing machine like I am, and you select a decorative stitch, an applique is considered a decorative stitch, the machine automatically adjusts your tension. And what it does is it makes sure that it's pulling your top thread to the underside just a little bit to make sure that your bobbin thread never shows on the surface. And so that is correct. That's what you want to see. You want to see a little color back there. But if you do have to loosen your upper thread tension, you just want to make sure that you're still seeing a little color there. You don't want to be seeing your bobbin thread come through to the top. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my thread color real quick, and we're going to go ahead and applique this cute little heart shape down. But I'm going to show you that what this stitch is going to look like when I adjust it, the width and the length, and how it's going to make it so much easier to go around these curves. So I'll be right back. Okay, we are all set up with our new thread color, and now I'm just going to adjust my stitch width. I'm going to reduce it to 2.6, and my stitch length I'm going to reduce to 1.8. So there we go. When you're doing these shapes, you always want to start where the other piece overlaps. We're going to start here. We're going to pivot around and end here. I suppose you could go the other way, but then no, you can't, because you need your needle originating from the right. So line up your angle here. And we're going to get as close as we can. And if we accidentally stitch down our previous color, it's really not that big of a deal. So just want to show you how this is going to look a little different than what we just stitched. Not going to pivot on halfway through a leg. I'm going to finish that leg and then pivot. Otherwise, you'll get a V there. So you're going to be pivoting a lot there. I'm going to go ahead and do my leg, and then as soon as it stops, I'm going to pivot. Because our stitch length has been shortened, we're going to get a much smoother curve here. And sometimes you need to pivot a couple times. So this inside corner, we haven't talked about inside corners. So the thing about inside corners is you need to make sure you're pivoting. There we go. Right in that V. And notice how you're on these smaller pieces, you're going to have to go just a little slower, do a few more pivots per piece, but really is worth it in the long run because you get a really, really pretty curve. All right, as soon as I finish this one, I'm going to go ahead and thread up with some green, and we're going to do a leaf because we've not done a point yet. There we go. Okay, I'll be right back. So before we get to the leaf, I wanted to show you this dark turquoise piece that's on top of everything on this bud. I started appliquing at the point on the outside point and gonna come around and I'm gonna finish there. So I wanted to show you how I finished, but I'm also gonna show you this inside point. And I apologize if you, I can't get the camera any closer. So if you're able to, once you get this video, you may be able to enlarge it so that you can see up close. But I'm just gonna go ahead and do this inside V. So there's gonna be a lot of pivoting going on here. So I've got one stitch, I'm at the point of the V. So I'm gonna have to come out of the V. And I have one more stitch, and then I'm gonna do a leg, or whatever you call it, the sideways stitch. So I'm gonna pivot and come back out of the V, one stitch, and now I'm gonna go ahead and do that leg. And now I'm gonna pivot around, and I'll show you how I end. Notice how I'm always trying to keep those legs perpendicular to the outside edge of the applique piece. That's why I'm doing all this pivoting. Another inside curve. And I'm approaching the outside V. And now I am going to go ahead and hit my auto lock button. And it is going to take one more stitch. It might take one more. It is. So now it's going to do a leg. I'm going to swing here and let the machine take a leg and lock right on that point. And it's probably not going to cut this 28 weight thread. Oh, it did. Okay, sometimes it doesn't. So now this entire bud is finished. Hopefully I can get it up here close enough for you so you can see. Boy, is that pretty. That thread is just gorgeous. It is an aurifil thread, which is we just love. So you can see the inside point here looks pretty good, and then we've got our outside point. So we started here, went around and ended up back here, and then I did that lock stitch. Now we'll go ahead and do a leaf, and then we'll be done. Okay, here we go. We're going to be doing one of the small leaves. Actually, it's the only leaf on here. No, these are like a big oak leaf, so we're going to do one of the small green leaves here. So I'm going to start in the middle of one side, not a point. And I'm going to get everything lined up here. And go ahead and start. Of course, most machines are going to do a lock-on stitch there. So I have my machine set up for the narrower, shorter applique stitch like I was using on the little bud pieces. And I'm going to pay attention to, okay, so my needle just did a leg left and then back right. So I have 2 stitches to go. And I can see that I have enough room at the end of my leaf. There is my first stitch. And now I'm going to pivot because I'm at the point. And I am going to go ahead and take the second stitch. And now I'm ready to come down this side. And my little leg, my applique leg, is going to be right on the end of that leaf. Sometimes they come out in a perfect place, and other times they don't. Sometimes you have to think about if you need to pivot or if you can just let the machine go. So we're going to take there's our second one, there's our leg, and I can get 1, 2, and I'm at the end of the leaf, and it went ahead and took my stitch. I'm going to leave it there because it's in line with my next side. I'm actually going to take 1 stitch here to define the tip of the leaf, And now I'm going to come down this side. One. Thought I had 2 stitches there. There we go. I'm going to hit my lock, and it's going to do 1 more stitch right over the first stitch that I took. Let me clip this little starting thread here. And let's look at how that turned out. That looks nice. So there, I think we've covered, whoa, sorry about that. I think we've covered just about every type of situation you will get into here. We've got outside points on our leaves. We've got inside corners on some of our pieces, outside corners, curves. You've got some inner curves and outer curves on this one. Oh, my adhesive's coming undone there. And then, of course, our long stems are just going to be nice and straight, so those will be really easy to do. So I hope you enjoy the applique on these blocks. It really is a lot of fun with a machine that automatically lifts the foot for you, so you can just use your hands to pivot. It's very relaxing. And if not, then just make sure that you keep your hand back here and you lift and pivot, lift with your right hand, pivot with your left, and then you'll be all set. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this little tutorial on machine applique, and I also hope that you make some time to be creative. And I'll see you back here next month.